Sarah, thank you. See you shortly. Now for something a little bit different. Doctor Who might have managed it, but for the rest of us, time travel just wasn't possible until now, because historical fiction thriller The Blood in Rome will transport you back to 55 AD as a time when tensions are rising on the eastern front of the Roman Empire and the soldiers are preparing for the bloodiest of battles. It's the latest in the series Eagles of the Empire, which follows two friends, Cato and Macro, on their adventures while serving in the Roman army. Well, the author Simon Scarrow, behind this best-selling series, joins us now in the studio. Welcome to you, Simon. Just give us a brief synopsis of the story, if you will.
Well, Macro and Cato, I mean, it's part of a long series, and what I've tried to do is to create a story about two characters which gives you a worm's eye view of the Roman Empire. And I think this is something that I thought was lacking when I came up with the idea, because so many books seem to be written from the imperial point of view, or from a general's point of view, or a politician's point of view. And what I was really interested in is what it would be like for ordinary soldiers. So that's why I've kind of kept it at that level. So they are the kind of the victims and the enactors of state policy. So you've got, and of course the first century is a lovely time to be writing about, because there's hardly a year that goes by without the Romans going out and doing great violence to somebody somewhere.
Lots of bloody battles, weren't they, that ancient Rome is associated with. I mean, it may seem like a ham-fisted segue, I'm afraid, but we were talking just before we came on air about the parallels between this time and where we are now with all the twists and turns of Brexit. And you were telling me that there was Brexit back then as well.
Well, there was a kind of Brexit, yeah. We were part of the Roman Empire up until early 5th century. And there is a sort of a school of history that sort of dumbs things down a bit and says, yeah, there was a letter that was sent to us in 410 saying, you now have to look out for yourselves because all these invaders coming across the North Sea, we can't afford to keep you up. You know, you're on your own. And things went pear-shaped pretty quickly as soon as we were out of the Roman Empire, because currency stopped being used within 20 or 30 years, cities began to collapse.
Project Fear.
Well, you know, it's Project Reality. I mean, it's Project Reality Roman style. And I think, you know, this is one of the things that, you know, if you set it in a more modern context, a lot of the stuff that has been put down to Project Fear is very much, you know, has turned out to be actuality. And I think actually it's the Brexiteers who've been trying to frighten us with this idea of, you know, Germany somehow being this dictatorship and in Europe that's going to control us, and I don't think that's the case.
Well, they also talk about the advent of fake news also being a thing in the time of the ancient Roman Empire, don't they?
Well, we've always had fake news. I mean, I think that's the problem. There's always going to be a degree of, you know, you had it easier in a way back in the day because there were no newspapers, there were no radio stations or television stations or anything like that. So whatever news you created became the official version, and nobody really questioned it. You know, nowadays it's a far harder thing to actually control. It's also a thing that's much easier to subvert, of course, as we found out with the American election, that foreign people could just set themselves up as sort of creating fake stories to get out there in order to generate, like those kids in Bulgaria did, you know, as a business proposition.
Just very quickly, I mean, do you see that the current period that we're in, is that ever going to lend itself to any kind of historical fiction in several hundred years hence?
Well, it's a bit difficult to say, isn't it? Because I think people looking back in the future at what is happening now. I mean, this is why it's important, I think, to remember this moment, because there's been nothing quite like this, I don't think, certainly in my lifetime, and certainly since 2016, because, you know, ever since then, I've been waking up in the morning and thinking, Trump got elected?
Yes,
Brexit was
I know.
voted for?
Well, haven't...
It feels like the man in the, you know, the High Castle or something.
All right. Well, very interesting to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for coming into the studio.